if you will find that you'll get a chance to talk at some point, and when you do, know that it's very possible there could be a police presence where you want to monitor what you say so that you don't incriminate yourself. Also, when we speak one at a time so that we can all hear each other and we can know what everybody's talking about. My name is Kathy Inman. I'm the state director for Norml in Arizona. We're doing a lot of neat things around the state this year. We started in December of last year and took state directorship so that we could all be on the same page for reform in Arizona. The fact is we've got a couple of different options coming up on the table. We've got an option for 2014, and we've got Dennis Folke with us to tell us a few details about that a little later. We've also got the Marijuana Policy Project saying they're coming here in 2016. Of course, there are folks that...
Somebody has to marijuana cigarette.
Something hard. Don't chase that. You're supposed to chase that. No offense. Just jokes. Lawyer joke.
He smiled.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
I never hear those lawyer jokes.
No, I bet. So we've got a couple options coming up. So I wanted to make sure, as Norml in Arizona, that we all have all the information. And that if you have any questions, that we know what's going on, what's coming up, and where we can be to hear all the good information about reform. We have a new campaign against prescription drugs. How many of you have seen our Keep AZ prescription drug free? That is the brainchild of Gilbert. He thought of that, and I put that little sticker together. It will be a sticker so that you can wear it on your cars very soon. We should have that for the next state meeting and beyond. We're very excited about that because the fact is that we lose about 10 kids a month in Arizona. 100 children in Arizona every year die from a prescription drug overdose. And we're not suggesting at all that children take marijuana, but we want them to know the facts, that marijuana has never killed anyone. Prescription drugs are killing thousands of people every year in America, and specifically about 100 a year in Arizona. 10 kids a month. Now, we get very upset about deaths overseas. We go, our soldiers, we go, we get incredibly upset when something happens and we lose lives. Every single month in Arizona, we're losing 10 children, and that's outrageous. So our lawmakers need to know that we have an alternative, and they need to get out of the way so that we can let folks know there is an alternative to these debilitating, poisoning drugs, prescription drugs, and how they label them in our statistics is as poisoning. So you won't see drug overdose, and they won't separate drugs. They'll lump marijuana right in there, even though we all know marijuana's never killed a living soul. We have some stuff coming up. We will get to that a little bit later, especially this Thursday. I really want you guys to know about that. This Thursday we have Matt Salmon, Lewis, and the team down there. Our local congressman, our local town council is having a town council meeting this Thursday, and we will be there. A couple of us, hopefully these lovely ladies up front, myself, are going, and we encourage well-spoken, well-dressed representatives to join us because we want to go down and give our opinion. You can talk or you can come and just support. But the fact is, I'm going to say something. I'm probably going to say something about the prescription drugs and the fact that we're losing 10 children a month. Because I think this needs to be addressed. These people, especially at Keep AZ drug-free, this is someone who's trying to save lives and save kids, and she's ignoring the facts. Marijuana kills no one, and that's the campaign she's on, is a war against marijuana. So on our website, I've got several links now to good facts from the Center for Disease Control, Arizona Youth Survey, and the good proof that you guys need to fight back, and to take these links to your congressman, to take these links wherever you need to take them, so that you can get the facts out to the people, and so that we can save some lives in Arizona by giving the truth about marijuana. So that's what's going on. We'll do some events and updates a little bit later, but for now, we've got Marc Victor in the house, and his time is very valuable. He is a busy fellow. Marc, will you come up here? Give it up to Marc. He's Thank you, Marc.
All right, did you want me to focus on any particular thing or just talk about marijuana or what?
Well, the fact is, well, it's always fun to listen about marijuana.
You probably
I know
need to
that you're
be.
very busy and there's probably a million emails. But I want you to comment if you know about the two things that are coming up for 2014 and 2016. Comment on the political climate in Arizona, how you feel that it would be to run a legalization campaign for 2014 versus waiting for this funded campaign from the Marijuana Policy Project that just did Colorado. They just did the same bill in Colorado that they're bringing here in 2016. So if you want, and Dennis here with us. Dennis is here with us fighting for freedom as well.
Well, for starters, let me say this. But actually, first off, who's heard me speak before? Show of hands. All right, just a couple. I'm going to try to stay somewhat focused tonight, but no guarantees, no promises. First off, I really hate talking about medical marijuana. It's my least favorite thing to talk about because I hate pretending about ridiculous issues. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure that marijuana helps some people. I'm sure it's done some good things for some people who have bad medical conditions. But it just, to me, seems like groveling to the government to be free. And that's just annoying to me. It just seems, it's worse than annoying, it's just un-American. It's disgusting to me that free people, allegedly free people, competent adults, have to go to the government and request a card and try to prove up some kind of medical need to have a right to put something into their own bodies. Anybody else disgusted by that whole concept? I mean, I am. It just doesn't seem right to me. So I would really much prefer, and I always do like to talk about the freedom issue. I mean, I'm for legalization of marijuana because it's the freedom thing to do. Not because it hasn't killed anybody, although I think that's true. Not because I think it's not dangerous in any way, I think that's true. And not even because I think the economic consequences of legalizing marijuana would be huge. Absolutely true. Not even because I think the violence consequences of legalizing marijuana would be huge, because the cartels would be out of business, because we could focus on dangerous criminals instead of running around chasing pot smokers. All those are good reasons. None of them are the best reasons. And that's what I like to talk about. The fact that if you want to say you have a free society, I mean, it's easy to say you're for a free society, right? Anybody can say that. But to actually be for a free society is a completely different question. And you can't be for a free society while at the same time you're in favor of trying to tell competent adults what they can put in their body, whether it's good for them or bad for them or otherwise. So I don't really reach that question about whether or not marijuana is good for you or bad for you or neutral for you. I often talk about on my radio show Mayor Bloomberg. He's my favorite witness to talk about. I don't know why, the guy seems like he's so far out there. He's just fun to talk about. And I like to say Mayor Bloomberg and I totally agree on an important point. We agree that those big sugary soda drinks, you know, once he's trying to make it legal, the big, I've seen these, they're like jugs. It's almost like a, let's say, a what? It's like a bucket. It's like a cooler. It's like a big, huge cooler of soda. I think he and I would agree that it's really horrible for you. I don't drink any of it. I mean, I like the taste of it. I don't drink any carbonated drinks at all because I think they're horrible for me. They're terrible. They're acidic, they're high in sugar, they bring no nutrition to the table. So Mayor Bloomberg and I could totally shake hands on that. We are in 100% complete agreement on that point. But where we part company is the most important place. We part company where I say, I'm in charge of me. So see, I get to say, I don't want to have the big sugary soda. But I'm not in charge of you guys. If you ask me your opinion, I'll give you my opinion about the big sugary soda drinks. But at the end of the day, if you choose to discard my opinion, that's your right as an American. And even further than that, if they tried to take your right to do something I would never do, drink sugary sodas away from you, I'd be the first person in line. In fact, I should be the first person in line, because it's really not so impressive, right? If another soda drinker wants to stand up and say, hey, my friend's got a right to drink soda. I mean, he's absolutely right about that. But isn't it really more impressive when somebody who does not drink soda stands up and says, I would never drink this stuff. I think it's absolutely horrible. But I totally support the rights of this other person. Why? Because they're a competent adult and they're in charge of their own bodies. To me, that's a much more powerful argument. That's why when it comes to all these issues, I like to stand up and make the case, especially when I'm not involved, especially when I'm, for example, I'm not a Hispanic, and I'm not trying to immigrate here from Mexico. But I'm a huge defender of those people to come here and become citizens in the United States. And I'm not begrudging people who are Hispanic who are fighting for that. To me, it's just less powerful. So I would love to see the people who don't smoke marijuana, people who have never tried it, or who have tried it and hate it, or who have tried it and hate it and think it's horrible for them. Those are the people who really should be standing up and saying, I'm for legalization of marijuana. Why? Because I don't want the government telling my neighbor how to live his or her life. Because I'm really interested in a free society, not just talking about a free society. And I think that we may have coming up here an unprecedented opportunity to really make the case for legalization of marijuana, but for freedom. Because I think that this drug war is doomed, absolutely going to end. And the reason I say that is because, 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago when I first started practicing, I'm from Massachusetts. So I come out here to this state, and Arizona does things very different than Massachusetts. This is a real conservative law and order, lock them up, throw away the key kind of place. So if you had asked me at that time, Mark, do you think people will ever be smoking marijuana with the government's permission? I would say you're crazy. It's never going to happen here, never. And I remember when Proposition 200 came through in '96. You guys remember that, the first medical marijuana? I remember when that climate was coming through. And it passed, but it didn't pass really on the issue that it should have passed. The reason it passed, in my opinion, was because the people who were behind it added a little section in Prop 200 to make things a little bit tougher for people who committed crimes while under the influence of illegal drugs. What they did was they took away the possibility of 15% early release from prison. That's what they did. And then that's what they advertised. Let's get tough on these people who commit violent crimes under the influence. That was a small little section of Prop 200. It was also the medical marijuana part. And then there was the part that said, hey, if you're convicted of a first-time possession of marijuana, you can no longer go to prison. Prison. You realize? I used to have to tell people before Prop 200 in '96 that you got caught with one marijuana cigarette. You're now charged with 2 felony offenses: possession of marijuana, Class 6 felony, and possession of drug paraphernalia. Little papers that hold the marijuana, 2 separate felonies. Each of them could carry up to 2 years in prison. You're looking at 4 years in prison as a max. I used to have to tell people that. And then when Prop 200 passed, it changed the law. It said you can no longer put those people in prison or even in jail. You've got to put them in counseling. At the time, I was working as a court-appointed attorney up in Yavapai County. I had tons of cases. And I filed what became known as Mark Victor's Prop 200 motion. I filed a motion that said, Judge, you no longer have authority to put this person in jail or prison, and you got to release them right now from jail. And the judge kind of smiled. This was Judge Richard Anderson up in Yavapai County, the Verde Valley Courthouse. He kind of smiled at me and said, yeah, okay, Mark, I'll take that under advisement. And I kept filing them, and making the arguments, to the point where the prosecutors were laughing at me. So there comes another one of Victor's Prop 200 motions. The judge had about 20 of them under advisement. One day he came out on the bench at the end of the day, and after regular business was done, he said, by the way, I've taken all these Mark Victor's Prop 200 motions under advisement, and I've had a chance to read them and look at the initiative and look at the new law, and you know what? He's right. And he started cutting people loose out of jail that day. The law was clear that that's what needed to happen, but the prosecutors were still stunned by it. They were still behind the curve, just like they're behind the curve right now with Prop 203. So Prop 203 comes in, and of course, the medical marijuana thing never happened back with Prop 200, right? Because all of the doctors were afraid to write prescriptions for marijuana. They were afraid they were going to lose their federal license to be doctors who could write scripts. So it really never got implemented. Interestingly enough, the legislature was also behind the curve on Prop 200, because as soon as it passed and they saw the horrors of not being able to put people in prison for first-time marijuana use, they immediately gutted the whole thing. They passed laws that undid the will of the people, and then it went to a vote again a few years later to undo what the legislature did, and it passed again. And I thought, wow, there really are some people in Arizona who want to change some things, and I was excited about it. But even so, if you had told me that people were going to smoke legally under Arizona, I still would have been kind of surprised by that. And then Prop 203 came through, right? Well, actually, before that, California passed the medical marijuana, right? Some other states, Colorado passed the medical marijuana. And I thought to myself, there are going to be American citizens in America smoking marijuana legally. That blew me away. But I still didn't think Arizona would do it. And then Prop 203 came through, and it passed. And I couldn't believe it. Could you guys believe that it passed?
It was supposed to pass by a landslide, Mark,
And then
it squeaked by and we almost didn't win.
Well, then it went the other way. It looked like it was going to go down.
Yeah.
You never know until it
It's
actually
crazy.
goes through. But when it actually passed, I thought, wow, are they really going to do this? And then you remember we had Jan Brewer running to the courts, and Bill Montgomery running to the courts. Did you see my article over there, by the way? Who do they represent? Because it dawned on me that both of these elected officials, who are they supposed to be representing?
Not the voters.
The people who voted for medical marijuana. So of course, they lost, and I'm happy about that. But 18 states now have said medical marijuana. And 2 states have gone all the way and said, you know what? All purposes. Washington and Colorado. So what does that tell me? That tells me that we're going to have 2 states, and I don't know if they've yet implemented their programs up there, but very soon it will be implemented if it's not already. What does that tell me? That tells me that we are going to have an opportunity now to watch what happens in 2 states. And we know exactly what's going to happen, right? Not very much. The sky isn't going to fall. People are still going to go to work in the morning like they always did. The people who smoked marijuana before will still smoke marijuana. And for the most part, the vast majority of the people who did not smoke marijuana still won't smoke marijuana. None of that's going to change. But the amount of money spent to prosecute people who are smoking marijuana and to try them and convict them and put them in jails and put them in prisons, ain't no stopping that train. They're going to save a lot of money. And we're going to get to point at those states and say, look what happened there. Look at the benefits that are going on in Colorado and in Washington. And just like the medical marijuana train went forward, the complete legalization train is going to go forward. It's going to happen because the climate is right, because the governments are absolutely broke, and they're squeezing us for money on every possible thing. And this is going to be too much for them to resist. So the question that I have is, what is going to be the argument of those who want freedom? Are we going to stand by and take the wimpy position and say, look, people in Colorado, yeah, they legalized it and they have all these great benefits, and that's okay, I guess. Or are we going to really stand up and make the right argument and say, you know what? People are in charge of themselves. People are in charge of their own bodies. Because if we can win that argument, we win a lot of stuff. We don't just win for them all, but we get America back. That's the way I look at it. So I think that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make the case not for marijuana legalization, but for freedom. Making that case, however, can be difficult. And what I've found is you need to take different approaches with different people. I'm sure you guys have found the same thing. But what I found fairly successful, I gave a speech at ASU fairly recently. And for whatever reason, I've been out at the forefront talking this issue up. I debated Bill Montgomery. I'm still working on him, by the way. I've not given up.
He was invited here tonight, Mark. I told him he'd be here. No, he never does.
Well, he responds to us. He came on our radio show.
I know.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. It was the night that the Jody Arias verdict came back, and I was held captive at Channel 12 for like 6 hours. So Mike did the show. But he said he would come back. I'm still working on him, and frankly, I'm going to work on him privately. I'm going to pull him to the side and say, hey, come on, man. It's just me and you. Can we talk? You've got to know this is un-American. You've got to know this is wrong. Because I think in his heart of hearts, he knows that. And you know, part of the reason I think that is because I never forgot being on a radio show many, many years ago, early in my career, with Russell Pierce. I was on with Russell Pierce, and we were talking about legalization of drugs. And I was hammering on the drug war, and he was hammering on why we need to keep the drug war going, and it's a good thing. We just going at it. We were at each other's throats the whole time. Then we went to a commercial. During the commercial break, the host, who was Ernie Hancock, turned to Russell Pierce and he said, come on, man, really? Do you really believe this stuff? And to my surprise, Russell Pierce turned and said, oh, you guys are totally right.
Oh.
I said, what?
Microphone was off, right?
Of course it was. I never would have expected this from him. He said, you guys are 100% right. Everything you're saying about freedom is right. Everything you're saying about the founders and the benefits and the economic benefits and all the other benefits, the cartels, the violence, you're right about all of that stuff. And I said, well, why not say this? He said, because I would never get reelected. And he said, the people are not ready for this argument yet. They're just not ready. And I said, well, Russell, you're a leader. Why don't you lead? Get out in front and say what's right. Forget about the re-election. Talk about what's right. He said, it's not the right time yet. But I always remember that. And I wonder how much of that, if any, Bill Montgomery has rattling around in his. So the places that I like to start when I talk to these people on the other side, and you know, you guys will have your own style and do your own thing, but I love to start on the freedom thing, but a lot of people just aren't quite here. I like to start with areas of agreement, right? And I said, what do we agree on? Let's start with what we agree on. I personally would like to see fewer kids using drugs. How do you feel about that? We say, well, yeah, that seems to make sense. I want a society with less violence. You agree with me on that one? We sort of say no, right? Don't you want to help enrich cartels and gangs? I don't. I want to take money out of their pockets. Can we agree on that? Can we agree that we want to do things that the cartels and the gangs don't want us to do? We don't want to help them, right? I generally agree with that. I would say, I always like to end the black market. Don't you think that's an overall public good? Shouldn't we make it easier for people who are addicted to drugs to get help, to quit if they want? Shouldn't that be a good goal? Usually they'll say yes. How about saving billions of dollars? Who's in favor of saving billions of dollars? I think that's a good idea. And this is the one that I think a lot of people don't get, and it's really a critical point. This issue of having a better justice system. Because what people don't see, because they don't really understand the system very well, they don't see the money, the harm that is caused by the money that is diverted away from going after real bad guys, rapists, murderers, robbers, the money that is diverted away from that, right? Because we don't have endless resources. We got a fixed pool of money that you've got in the justice system. To take $1 away from going after a violent criminal, to go after a pot smoker, I always say, don't you think we should have a more efficient justice system, does a better job of putting violent criminals behind bars and is less expensive, you know, we generally will say, yeah, I think that's a good idea. What about lowering the prison population? And we say, can we agree that being the leader of the world in incarcerating people, that's probably not something we should be proud of in America? Don't you think we can go and do some things to try to lower that? Or is it just that we're more violent and have more criminal tendencies than everyone else in the world? What about protecting and increasing freedom? Who's against that? And the other thing that I generally will get them to agree on as well, my final point, can we agree? And by the way, I can always get the DEA agents to agree with this privately. They'll agree with me every single time I throw it out. Can we agree that we are never, ever, ever, ever going to win the drug war? It's never going to be won. Can we agree on that? If they're honest, they'll agree on that too. Because nobody's going to make the argument that we're winning. Have you ever heard anybody make that argument? No, it's a joke, by the way. When I raise it to the DEA agents, and I do this privately, off the record, you know, back far away from the courtroom, we're waiting for a witness or something like that, and I'll say, hey man, how's that drug war going? And I say it just like that, and they say, look man, it's a job. I say, no, we're going to win anytime soon? How's it going? You guys rolling out some new programs anytime soon? Are we going to eradicate that green leafy substance from the planet anytime soon? How are we doing? There's not even a discussion there. No one will even engage me in that discussion because they know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it's never going to work. It's never going to happen. And I think you can get most, if not all, people to agree on those points. And then just simply make the point, if we ended it, we could accomplish all these goals. I think that's absolutely true. So, I think there's no downside whatsoever for ending the drug war. Absolutely none. When I say less kids using drugs, that's what the statistics show. If you go to Amsterdam, where it's still illegal if you're under, I want to say 16 or 18, I've been there 3 times, they use both adults and minors at a lower rate than we do. And how many people have been to Amsterdam? That's it. You know, it's like anything else. It's like when you show up in Amsterdam, generally people are excited to go and smoke legally at these little coffee houses. And it's fun to walk in and you get a menu. They literally say, hey, do you want to see the menu? They hand you the menu. It's got all these different varieties of marijuana. And they say, do you want to take a look at it? They got a microscope sitting over here and they'll show it to you and they'll talk to you about it, tell you what's good about it, tell you what's bad about it. Does it get you high? Does it get you stoned? They'll give you all the differences. It's kind of like the Eskimos with the 9 different ways to say snow. They have so many different ways to describe marijuana. But you know, after a while, it becomes no big deal. And if you make a point to talk to the people who live there, they tell you, yeah, it's not a big deal. It's kind of fun. The only thing I could make an analogy to is, remember when you turned 21? Remember that? How fun it was to drink when you were under 21? Remember you would drink a beer, and oh, look at me, I'm drinking beer. And then you turned 21, and you had that ID. This time you could use the actual ID that showed you were 21, and you could go to the bar, and they would serve you alcohol. The police couldn't stop you, nobody could stop you. You were in charge of yourself. And that was fun until you were about 21 and a half. That's no big deal. I drank more alcohol when I was under 21 than when I was over 21. So doesn't that just make sense? I don't know. Maybe it's just part of living on the planet. So in any event, I think we're right here at the precipice of making the right argument for ending the drug war, and I think we're at the same spot for lots of different freedom-related issues, whether it's going to be, you know, taxes or health care or guns. A lot of these issues, they're all connected. And one of the beefs that I have with Norml sometimes, I'm not going to talk about legalizing other drugs. But
thanks, Mark.
I'm doing a favor tonight.
Thank you.
But you know, one of my beefs with Norml is exactly the same beef that I have with the gay community, which is exactly the same beef that I have with the gun community. Exactly the same beef I have with all of the biker community. I talk to all these communities, right? Because if you talk to the bikers, you know, they don't want to be told that they got to wear a helmet. They don't, you know, it's a freedom thing. They don't want to be told what to do. And if you talk to the gay crowd, they, you know, they want the right to marry and be treated the same way. And if you talk to the pot smoker crowd, they want marijuana legalized. If you talk to the gun crowd, and I talk to them, these crowds all the time. I speak at the Crossroads Gun Show. I talk to the gun guys all the time. They're all about guns. But I don't want to talk to them about guns. I want to talk to them about legalizing marijuana. I want to talk to the gay crowd about guns. And I want to talk to the bikers about legalizing marijuana. Because to me, it's all the same issue. It's all about who's in charge of you. You or somebody else. That's what it's about. And all I'm really saying is, if you're a competent adult and you're peaceful, what you're doing with your body, your money, your time, ain't none of my business. I got nothing to say about it, unless you ask me. I'll give you my opinion. You can take it or leave it. That's what freedom's really about. So, I always encourage people, don't be a one-issue person. You guys are 100% right on this issue. And this is an important issue. I remember when I got fired as a judge. You guys know that story? I got fired as a judge many years ago because I refused to preside over drug cases. I said I won't do it. I'm not going to put my name on any order that puts another human being in jail or prison or even on probation. There's more of a story to that. If you're interested, I wrote an article. It's strangely titled "My Contribution to Science." And it's about my very short-lived judicial career. I had it worked out with another judge where I said, hey, I'll do all these other cases, but I don't put people in jail, prison, or probation, or fine them, or do anything to them just because they control their own bodies. So I reassigned those cases to another judge, wrote a 5-page mid-entry on why I wouldn't handle those types of cases. And the presiding judge called me up and he said, Mark, you're going to ruin your judicial career. Get out there and start doing drug cases. And I said, if that's what happens, that's what happens. But I'm not putting my name ever on an order that's going to send another human being down to live in a joint or anything like that. And so my partner at the time became a big story. The Republic did a story, judge fired on his first day, blah, 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 blah. My partner at the time said, Mark, you know, I understand you're a principal guy and all this. But all this just over weed? All this over weed? You lost your judicial career and, you know, all this, you're in the press and this and that, all over weed. And I said, it's not over weed. It really doesn't have anything to do with weed. It has everything to do with being in charge of yourself. It has everything to do with freedom. And I went home and I looked at how many judges in Nazi Germany refused to follow Hitler's laws. You guys know? There was one. But think about that for a second. We're going to parade Jews off to the gas chambers. We're going to set curfews. We're going to do all these things, not just Jews, lots of different other groups. We're really going to execute millions of people. That's the law. And only one judge had a problem with that? Only one? I get in conversations with prosecutors all the time today who say things like, you know, Mark, I totally agree with you. You got to change the law. The law's the law. And I always say back, really? Is that the most important value you have? That wasn't what Martin Luther King thought when he wrote his letter from Birmingham jail. He specifically talked about unjust laws, how he wouldn't follow an unjust law, how you got a duty to violate an unjust law. That wasn't what Rosa Parks thought when she didn't follow the law and go to the back of the bus. It's not what Gandhi was talking about either. And it wasn't what the Nuremberg trials were about. All those judges and officers who followed the law, the Nuremberg trials said, you know what? There's something more important than following the law. So I said to my partner, I said, you know, I'm not going to just follow the law. I'm going to do what's right. Wherever the chips fall, they fall. And the presiding judge filed a judicial complaint against me for having the audacity to recuse myself from drug cases. Fortunately for me, the Commission for Judicial Conduct said a judge, and I had researched this thoroughly before I did this, a judge has a right to recuse him or herself for any reason or no reason at all. Absolutely get to recuse yourself. I gave a whole host of reasons. One of them was, hey, I'm on the legal committee for Norml, but it's not that I feel like I can't be unbiased. It's that because I don't want to be. That was my take on it. So, I would just urge all of you to try to expand the fight into a broader fight for freedom. To not wane at all on the fight to legalize marijuana. It's the right to control your body, and that's a basic, fundamental liberty. I don't think you can be free without the right to control your body. I mean, what else matters? So when I explained that to my partner, he understood, and he supported my decision. He was a little surprised about it in the way that I went about it. And you know, I did take a fair share of criticism from, that was justified, I think, from other defense attorneys who said, you know what, Mark, you could have just kept a low profile, and instead of giving somebody 5 years, you could have given them 2 years, or even probation if you could have done it that way. And that would have been a big benefit to that individual person. Absolutely true. But that wasn't the course that I chose. I had hoped that if I could have survived, I happen to know that there were lots of other judges who felt the same way about the drug war, and they didn't want to ruin their judicial careers. But I would have liked to have seen more judges stand up and say, you know what, I'm not going to follow the law on this either. I'm going to recuse myself. But at least recuse yourself. So you know what, I'm not going to participate in this un-American craziness. This is the stuff of totalitarian regimes. It's not the stuff that's worthy of a free nation. Drug war is not worthy of a free nation, and that's why it needs to end. So I want to leave some time for you guys to ask questions on any of this stuff. Today I gave a talk, and they wanted to talk about Elizabeth Johnson and Jodi Arias, so whatever, which I find frustrating, by the way, because you know, interesting cases. But in the context of everything going on in America right now, the fact that people would be so enamored by a admittedly good-looking defendant in a first-degree murder case with a sex tape, it's a soap opera first-degree murder case, but that attracts more attention than Eric Holder making statements about due process isn't necessarily judicial due process.
Get him in the office.
That gets about a blip. And that's the most un-American, totalitarian statement I ever heard any lawyer ever utter. And this is the chief lawyer of our nation. Nobody seems to care. So incidentally, I wrote another article, Unsung Heroes and Villains of Freedom. Did you bring that one, Mike?
I didn't bring that one.
All right, well, if you're interested, it's on my website at Attorney for Freedom. And if you disagree with anything that I ever say, I love criticism, I love disagreement. To me, it's an American thing to disagree. Don't ever apologize. I would never say, oh, I'm so sorry, I disagree with you. If I got it wrong, I want somebody to straighten me out. Tell me where I got it wrong. You know what? I had it wrong one time on the drug war. I remember being in my undergraduate at ASU and being a Ronald Reagan supporter and arguing on the last day of class with some guy who I only remember as being a Hispanic guy, it was me and him in front of the whole class arguing, one of those, you know, this far away from a violent confrontation kind of argument at ASU in our Justice Studies class about the drug war, and I was making all the normal, you know, gateway drug, you're gonna ruin your body, and he was making not the best argument, just the economic case for ending the drug war about cartels and prohibition, sort of an obvious type of an argument. And I was arguing against him, and then the class ended. It was the last day of class. I never saw the guy again. And I'd love to thank him today if I could see him. And I remember walking to what I call the poor man's lot, lot 59, which was far away from my classes. And I remember waiting for the light to change as I could cross the street right there by Sun Devil Stadium. And I thought to myself, man, he made some pretty good points. And I thought, he can't be right about that stuff. And then I thought, well, maybe the truth is the most important thing. Maybe I really ought to think about what the guy said. I said, you know what, I'm going to evaluate the guy's argument. I remember walking across the street, and by the time I stepped on the curb on the other side of the street, I think he's right. He's right about this drug war thing. And I changed my mind just because of the force of his argument. He never knew, ever, still doesn't to this day, that he changed my mind on that point. And so, I guess my point in telling you this is, you never know when you plant a seed. I had another guy I found out 7 years after we had an argument at the coffee plantation coffee house, which I think is now out of business. 7 years later, he told me, he said, you know what, Mark, I'm now a libertarian. I argued ferociously against you, and now I'm actually an activist in California for the Libertarian Party. The last I ever heard of this guy, he was telling me I was a crazy lunatic for being a libertarian. They're never going to win anything, and never won anything, and it's wrong about everything, and on and on and on and on and on. And I didn't know, except that this guy was a friend of the brother of my ex-wife. And so I just happened to find out 7 years later that he changed his mind. We're on the right side of this issue. We are unquestionably on the right side of this issue. We should argue it as often as we can, to as many people as we can, in the best ways that we can. And don't be frustrated by somebody saying we're absolutely crazy. I think the founding fathers are on our side. In fact, this weekend in Rocky Point, Mike will confirm about what would you call that thing, Mike?
The velvet paint.
A painting of...
Like the old Elvis type.
A painting of Benjamin Franklin smoking a joint. That happened many times. And so do lots of historians. I think that those founding fathers would be absolutely shocked to know that Americans are sitting in prison today for having weed. They would be shocked and disgusted. I would love to talk to them. So we're on the right side of the issue. And of course, if you have an open invitation, I would love to come and show up and help debate the issue at any time, any place. In fact, a good buddy of mine, who some of you know, Tom Dean, Tom Dean and I say we will show up anywhere, anytime, any place, debate any person or panel of people on this issue without any prep at all. We don't want the questions in advance. We don't want any of that stuff because we're that confident, not that we're such great debaters, but we're that confident that we're on the right side of this issue. So feel free to throw that invitation out there anytime you like. Any questions?
Yes, will you be at Nat Salmon's town hall meeting Thursday night?
Will I be where?
At Nat Salmon's town hall meeting, Congressman Nat Salmon's town hall
Thursday
meeting.
night. I don't think it's on my calendar. I don't really know anything about it. I generally try to avoid politicians.
Think about it, we'd love to have you. We're going down, we ladies, and anyone who wants to join us, we'd love to have a well-dressed, well-spoken representative like yourself join us.
You know, one of the things I don't like is getting a little soundbite. It's one of the reasons I don't call radio shows and things like that, because they'll just cut you, you get 10 seconds to make a point and they cut you off.
But they're public, the town hall, and then you get 3 minutes, and then the old folks that are sitting around, it's free exposure.
So is it just to come on every issue or just?
You can bring up anything, and in fact, if you turn it into a question, I understand in 2 weeks they have to come back and answer you.
Well, let me think about it.
Yeah, think about it.
This is
We'd love
my
to have
second
your-
speech today. I got my radio show tomorrow night. I think Thursday's my only night.
I don't want to take away your only night.
But I may
know what
go.
that's like.
So. All right, other question.
In any due process, there's an appeal process. So when my card is time to renew, I won't have the rights to cultivate. And I'm new at this, but isn't there an action or something on the appeal process of me as one person fighting, going to the courts or going to
I'm not-
After there's somebody filing a lawsuit, they need to talk to.
Is that a?
We're talking
Are you
about the
talking-
25 mile.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
talking
but
about the
that's
fact that
so
there's now a
cool.
dispensary within 25 miles.
But that's so cool, how the, I'm outside that, but technically in their circle. I can't get there in 25 miles, I'm 31, but I'm in the circle of it. I'm 60 years old, I got an old pickup truck, and I just want to be able to have a few plants that I can have for my
One of
own.
the fun things for me about the whole Prop 203 thing is there's going to be so many things to litigate. There are so many
But the
aspects.
appeal process is.
Just the interaction of DUI law in Prop 203. How our DUI law is going to interface with Prop 203 and it's going to create lots of litigation. So there are going to be a lot of areas that need to be litigated. The same thing happened with Prop 200 because some of my friends were behind drafting Prop 200 and I was kind of cranky with them because they never sent it to me to read. And one of the obvious mistakes in Prop 200 was they didn't include drug paraphernalia. And so at the beginning, the prosecutors were saying, okay, well, fine, we can't put you in prison for the marijuana, but the wrapping paper that goes around the marijuana, that's still a paraphernalia, and that's not subject to Prop 200. You could still go to prison on that. Until finally, years later, the Court of Appeals resolved it by saying, probably the right answer, by saying, if it's paraphernalia that's incident to possession, it's covered. If it's paraphernalia that's incident to production or something along those lines, it's not covered. But that could have easily been fixed by just simply drafting it in. So there will be all kinds of things that are ambiguous in the litigation. You can only hope that the Court of Appeals does the right thing. Incidentally, when Prop 200 came through, there were judges who were talking about holding people in contempt when they did things like violating their probation to get around the incarceration thing. Say, well, we're not incarcerating them on the marijuana charge. Now we're holding them in contempt because they failed to follow our order on probation. I don't know where that ever went. I've never heard of anybody being held in contempt on that. But it goes to show you the motivations behind some of these people. They're just not, the only way to say it that I can see is they're just not interested in a free society. They're interested in imposing their views on other competent adults. And you know, one of the things that I think is a common misunderstanding, or at least a common objection to this stuff, the first thing out of somebody's mouth is going to be, oh, so if we legalize marijuana, then people can go get in their car, get high, and ride down the road and kill other people in their cars. You got to spend a little time saying, no, that's not what nobody's arguing for that. Presumably, I think most people, if not all, would agree that if you get in your car and you are impaired because of marijuana to the extent that you're causing a danger to other people on the road, that's a problem. That's an actionable problem. We have reckless driving for that. And I think that we should use reckless driving for that. But, you know, as a footnote, I've never had one case in my almost 20 years of doing criminal defense where somebody caused a car accident from after smoking marijuana. Actually, as I say that, that's not totally true. There was one case I had, and I couldn't believe it when it came in. This guy was driving his mom's vehicle, and he had smoked a marijuana cigarette, and he was messing with the stereo because he didn't like the station his mom left it on. And he wasn't 100% clear how to use the stereo, and he was messing with it as he was driving, and he didn't stop soon enough, and he bumped the car right in front of him, causing a tiny little fender bender. And I remember saying to him, this was years ago, I said, you know, you're the only case I've ever had, ever, where somebody smoked a joint. Now, of course, I don't know what it had anything to do with the marijuana. No, it was the radio, I'm sure. But in fairness and full disclosure, but that's it. I've had more cases than I could ever count where somebody got drunk from alcohol and caused a car accident, tons of them. But I've not only have I never had a marijuana case like that, I've never even heard of one. I don't even know another criminal defense attorney who's had it. I'm sure there are some, but you know, there was a study that was on the Norml website, the national Norml website, that talked about the difference between when someone is impaired by marijuana versus when someone's impaired by alcohol. And what they found, and I think this is true, that when someone is impaired by alcohol, their ability to appreciate the fact that they're impaired is reduced. In other words, it's the, oh, fine, you know, and they're messed up. When it's marijuana, it's a different type of reaction. I think the person who is high has a better appreciation, say, hey, you know, I'm kind of messed up. Either I shouldn't drive or I'll drive, but you know what, I'm going to pay extra attention. I'm going to take extra care. They've compensated for that lack of reaction time or whatever. And that is the only thing I can think of to explain it, because there's certainly lots of people smoking marijuana and driving cars. I don't think there's any question in that. Questions? That's it. You guys are an easy crowd.
Why do you think the legislature is so anti-marijuana? Why?
I don't think, look, the legislature, in my opinion, is comprised of a bunch of wimps, okay? They are like other politicians in that they will do whatever they think will get them reelected. And at least until very recently, their perception has been that the electorate will not put me back here if I want to end the drug war. Now, I saw recently, for the very first time, past 50% of the people in the United States who think we ought to legalize marijuana. So maybe that will change. But you know, politicians are wimps. They want to see that there's absolutely clear writing on the wall that they will get reelected before they're going to come out and take a stand. Although some of them very slowly have. There was a statement that came out, I think 2 weeks ago, it was Dana Rohrabacher. I don't know if many of you remember him. He was in the Reagan administration for a while. He was a representative in Congress for a while, very influential. And strangely enough, according to his letter, what convinced him was the fact that his mom was ill and had lost her appetite and was in pain, and somebody had said, hey, maybe she smokes a joint, it'll help her. And apparently it did, and he said, wow, now that my mom's going to be helped by this, I guess I should change my opinion. And he wrote what I thought was a pretty good letter, saying, hey, I've spent the vast majority of my adult life and political life opposing anything that would end the drug war. I've been a huge supporter, but now I got to say, because of the violence, because of the incarceration, because it's a failure, because of all these things, it's time to end it. And I thought that was pretty good that one of these sort of conservative, right-wing Republican types are going to start coming out of the woodwork. But you know, it was William F. Buckley. He was one of the first Republicans to come out years ago. So I hope that, because we know that these people smoke weed, right? I mean, we know they have. Like we know these prosecutors have, who are putting people away from marijuana. And I love to corner them and say, tell me you've never smoked a joint. And usually, remember this one long pause with this prosecutor, and then he says, I'm not going to answer that question. I think you just, we know at least a significant portion of them have. And I don't know how they live with the hypocrisy that must invade their heads to say, or even the presidents, right? All these presidents have admitted to smoking. They all have, and somehow they have not screwed up their lives and have managed to become the president of the United States. I mean, it was Barack Obama's you can find him on YouTube saying, I think we should decriminalize marijuana. We know this guy smoked, right? We knew George Bush was smoking.
Oh, yeah.
We knew he used cocaine, right? We knew that these people, so isn't there something horribly hypocritical about saying, well, I wasn't caught. I was able to continue. I didn't lose my federal student aid. I didn't go to jail or prison. I didn't get a felony hung on my record, and I was able to escape that. But yet I still support doing these horrible things to other people. I don't know if you remember, we lost what could have potentially been a good justice on the United States Supreme Court. Remember Judge Ginsburg? Mm-hmm. He could have been a good justice, but he didn't get on the Supreme Court because back in his college professor days, in the 70s, he admitted to smoking a joint. And that's what kept him off the United States Supreme Court. Times are changing. Times are changing. And so I hope we can maximize it in terms of freedom.
What do you think?
Well, I was just gonna say, 3-4 years ago, I forgot, but anyway, Pat Roberts had said that it was time to legalize marijuana. And Carter, said it's time to legalize. So we've had big people saying this, but it just, we're such a invisible
Well,
group of people.
I talked to different groups. Today, I was in the heart of Mormon Mesa.
Oh, okay.
I was at the Landmark restaurant talking to a group of people in Mesa. And, the talk was not about marijuana, but it comes up. And what I told them is people need to be in charge of themselves if you're going to have a free society. And I think a good number of them sort of took that to heart and agreed and say, look, even though to me it's a big statement, right? Can you be big enough to come out and say, look, even though I don't smoke marijuana, I don't like marijuana, I think it's bad, I will ruin your life, or this, that, or the next thing, but can you be big enough to do the but? I don't get to tell other competent adults how to run their lives. I mean, isn't that really all we're asking for? That's all these groups and all these issues are really asking for. The right to be an American and to live as an American, to live as the captain of your own ship, to be in charge of your own body. And you gotta be able to take the lumps for that too, right? There's another side of that. Sometimes they say, hey, if these people wanna smoke marijuana and they run into health problems, I shouldn't have to pay for their health problems. Can we agree on that? Can we agree that if the biker wants to drive his Harley down the road without his helmet, that's fine, absolutely entitled to do that. But if he falls down and whacks his head on the pavement why should we have to pay for his risky choices, right? And I think that's only fair, because the moment that you say no, I think you do have to pay for someone else's risky health choices. Now you're opening the door for Mayor Bloomberg to come in and say, hey, you know, sugary drinks and butter and all these other things. I think you don't get one without the other. So I think if you're arguing for sort of socialized health care, I think you're gonna have a problem for other people who might say, hey, if I'm gonna be in charge of your health care, I got something to say about what you put in your body. And frankly, I find that a reasonable kind of an argument. To me, the only way out of that is to say, maybe people ought to take their responsibility for their own lives. They ought to be in charge of themselves, but it's not just rights, it's responsibilities. And I think that we need to make that point clear as people who promote freedom. Question?
Well, you speak to a lot of people. You're an excellent speaker. Thank you for this evening.
Thank you.
How would you characterize from your experiences with all your speaking engagements what the political climate right now is for a
Well, let me tell you, toughest, for which issue? For marijuana?
for marijuana?
Yeah, the toughest groups I ever go into are the Tea Party crowd. And I've spoken to several of these Tea Party groups. And you know the groups I'm talking about. Very right-wing, very
Packing a
religious,
gun.
very conservative, yeah. And I don't ever back down. In fact, I went and spoke to a group called the Red Mountain Patriots in Mesa. And it was a significant group. There were probably 200 to 300 people there. And some of them got up and walked out as soon as I started talking about legalization of marijuana. But I tried to make the point to them that if you want to actually be for freedom, you've got to make peace with the notion that other people may decide to use their freedoms in ways that you don't like, in ways that you don't agree with, or that you find immoral or unhealthy or disgusting. As long as they're peaceful, who are you to tell them what to do? And I find that about 50% of them, I think I get them on board. Mike, you agree with that?
Yeah.
About 50%. I think there's the other 50%, they walk out because they don't want to hear what I've got to say, or they still say, well, I think marijuana is the devil's spawn or something. I don't know. But they just will not engage on the issue. But I think about 50% of them are starting to change their mind. And today in Mesa, I was pleasantly surprised. I had some people say to me, you know what, Mark, I tend to agree. I'm very libertarian. And I forgot to drop my favorite Mormon line on them, which, by the way, I encourage you to use as often as possible. Apparently, Joseph Smith said, teach them correct principles, but let them govern themselves.
That's right.
And Mormons will always agree that Joseph Smith said this line. And so I like to say, well, is that something you really believe, or something that you just like to say? Because if you want to teach them correct principles, if you want to teach them not to smoke marijuana for whatever principles you want to teach them about, that's fine. But you got to let them govern themselves, which means if they want to smoke marijuana, they're in charge of them. And to me, it's the same, whether you're talking about sugary soda snacks or bad food or other drugs or who knows what any of these other things, right? I don't want to have anything to say about any of these issues. Two gay guys living together, it ain't my thing. It's just not my thing. I don't understand it. I'm not interested in it. But I support their right to do whatever they want to do so long as it's peaceful.
Oh, well, you can listen to it anytime. We were on Marc's radio show, Dave and I, the other, last Thursday night. Of course, you guys can find that on Facebook. We've got it posted up there. Just look through our Facebook, and do keep in touch with us on Facebook. We've got 2 of them, and a business page run by our friend Marc Trudeau. Thank you, Lori. She's doing a great job in there. And membership. If you guys are interested in being a member, it's minimal. It's $10. We've got 25 supporting, 50 is supporting. We've got it on the web. We've got more information back there. You get one of these handy cards, which Jason gets tonight because he is a member, and thank you for supporting, sir. There's several members here. If you'd like to support us, we love your support. That's how we run. That's what we do. There's also a basket back there. If you guys are so inclined, if you have any extra, just for flyers and the stuff that you see around, cover our coffee, cookies, and all that stuff like that. Please help us out if you can. Otherwise, do keep in touch. Facebook, Twitter, on the web. We've got the great information about the prescription drugs. on the web, please go there. There's excellent links there to fuel the fire and get the good word out, get the facts out. Because we can't fight back without the facts. That's one thing I know. I get tongue-tied sometimes, but one thing, if you know some facts, you can get through any conversation. Walking up and down Main Street this afternoon, around 4:20 coincidentally, I found that I had an hour, and I said, I've got this stack of flyers for this meeting. Unfortunately, I don't know, did anybody get that flyer? Any of our couple new faces? I'm hoping to bring in more interest, obviously, and let our neighbors know that we're here right down the street. And I think it's awesome that I let everybody in town, including Matt Salmon, know that we're here tonight, and looks like no incidents, so just let's keep it that way, everybody. Anyway, hosted potlucks. We've had a couple of volunteers. We did one, and some of you guys were there. Thanks for coming out. It was awesome. Just love the heck out of having you guys over. But we suggest it. Potlucks are fun. We all bring something, nobody really has to spend a lot of money on, dinner and all that. We all bring something, and then it's just kind of fun that way. You never know what you're gonna get. Sometimes we starve, but we did okay. This time we did okay. This time we all ate, we were all full. It was awesome. Let's see, I had a meeting the other night, I just want to let you guys know, called the Honest and Open Conversation about Marijuana. Unfortunate, kind of like the showing here tonight. I want to bring up our numbers. The fact is that I've been reaching out probably since October when I found out about the cancer and cannabis collide there. I have been trying to reach out to those who generally wouldn't come to a normal meeting. Trying to reach out to the mothers, and to the folks that generally, again, wouldn't subscribe to our cause. I think it's more important for us to get people into the meeting, see that we're normal, and see that they can feel comfortable here. Because there's a lot of good folks here, and I think people don't understand that. So the more you can talk about bringing folks to the meeting, two folks during the month, we can have more people here, more familiar, more. I love the familiar faces, but more new faces, and it's wonderful to see those of you that did show up today. Again, we want to build up our numbers in all our meetings, and if it were up to me, we'd have a meeting in on every corner, because I just think there's enough of us that we are the silent majority, and that we need to spread that good information to others, including our lawmakers. So I hope you guys will come down, consider coming down Thursday night to the town council meeting, so we can make some good points to Matt Salmon and the town council and the mayor, John Lewis here in Gilbert.
What time
I'd
is it?
love to. I believe that's also 7 o'clock. That's another 7 o'clock meeting, just like ours. And that is at the Gilbert, at the town center there, right there, Gilbert and Warner, on the south. See how happy she is now? And I'm happy for you, I have to say. I just don't want to, let's do a applause for this lady. These are starting conversations. I know you did it so that you could feel good with your, with your center there and with your church. And I just respect that so much. But the more conversations we can start with these with professionals, and if you do have a doctor or clergy that does endorse marijuana, please do get a statement of principle slip back there. It's from the Marijuana Policy Project, and they will put them, if they're willing, in their database of professionals and clergy that are willing to speak out on this subject, and I know they use that. They use everything for everything. So please get involved there too. 2014, 2016, who knows? We've had a couple, we haven't really talked about it tonight. We're going to keep looking. We're going to keep watching as normal. What I plan to do is watch through the summer for the next 4 months. And just see what's going on. See what's going on with this 2014 run. It would be great to get something on the ballot. The thing that I am worried about is I don't want to lose. Straight up, I don't want to lose. So if you hear me hesitating about this 2014, it's not because I don't want to legalize marijuana. It's because I don't want to lose. If it's a campaign that's not fully funded, that's not, doesn't have everything, it's not as politically calculated as the one that will come in 2016. Those folks, they know what they're doing. I've seen them at work, and we barely passed with them, bringing 203 to us. We barely passed that. So yeah, I do have my reservations about 2014. I want to legalize marijuana. That's all I want to do. I want to grow plants in my backyard. I want to have trees. For now, you know, that's what I want. That's in my heart. I want everyone to have access to this plant because I think it can do so much good. I think we all know that in this room. So let's bring in more folks. Bring in more folks. Talk this month, folks. Talk about this lovely local museum that we're using that we could fill. Should have 100. We could fit 100 people.